celluloid, and we're turning it into music and podcast for you.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and if I were to take a guess, probably mostly gentlemen, to another episode of We Came From Celluloid. I am Nicky P here, as always, with my good friend, my brother from another mother, my bandmate, business partner, and just all-around good guy, Brian Pritchard. How are we doing today, my good friend?
Wonderful, Nick. Thank you for asking. Good to be here. It's rainy out there. There's a spot in my kitchen. There's a vent above the stove range, right? And it goes straight to the outside, but there's nothing outside. We need to put some mesh or something out there, as I hear birds in my ceiling, Nick. That's frustrating.
Oh, my bathroom, I think we have raccoons in our vent. and birds, and there's just a lot of activity above our shower sometimes.
What a treat. What a treat.
If I owned the home, I would probably do more about it, but I don't.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to.
Well, I do. I absolutely own this home, and I will maintain it. But no, I'm doing great, man. I'm excited for another busy day. There's a lot going on. Just juggling a lot of plates, but music stuff is chief among them. I did talk to our engineer, Michael Seifert, yesterday briefly, and he was going to package up and send our stuff to the offsite mastering guy, so that Snowfalls and Stay Gold, right, will be ready for release. He'd mentioned that one of the just services that they like to provide across the board in their workflow is the acapella and instrumental versions as well. So we will have all of those.
Pretty standard, honestly.
Licensing and stuff like that. And if we ever wanted to try to get our music used in a TV show or something like that, things that people would want. So I thought that was thoughtful, and it made me feel like, again, even tying some of our worlds together of yeah, boy, we really should, at some point come up with a couple outbound campaigns like that once we have the collateral materials to do so, not to get super dark.
I'm still just waiting to hear finished version of the tracks, Brian. That's 90% of where I'm at. I still haven't heard a final version of
Shit, where's my brown coat man? We're ready. What's going on?
Brown coat man's not the problem. It's the other one.
Which one? Beetlejuice?
Yeah, I have to get a final cut from that of that from, I believe, Max to even give it a final listen.
No, that's true. And the one thing that had occurred to me in terms of not knowing what I don't know, in terms of Seifert's side, our engineer's side, is that's different drum session than what he had. He's been working with the drum edits, the files that we'd previously sent him. All the volume 2 stuff, he did the drum editing for and already had all of that in there. So anyway, when I say I don't know what I don't know, I'm going are we going to send this to him and he's going to be like, what is this? That there's actual additional work to be done in that respect, maybe that I haven't thought of, but whatever, what will be. But I guess I'm only saying that because it's in my mind, I wanted to include it not just because I love it, but because it's a 2-minute song, and somehow that duration, logically, I would think leads to a faster process. That, you know what I mean, as you're cycling through and doing stuff. I know that some of the levels that you're setting, obviously, it's it could be 2 minutes or 20 minutes long. Now that applies to the whole thing, but I still feel like the shorter the song is, the faster logically it's going to get done.
Well, so in my personal experience, the shorter the song is, the less elements you need to bring in to make it feel fresh. So all of the over recording that like Seaford I think would blame me for is because I've got a 5 and 6 minute song here that we have to keep fresh and interesting for 6 minutes. Whereas a Beetlejuice is a verse, chorus, and kind of an intro, outro thing. If that's going to be on the record, I don't know. So there's not a ton going on. There doesn't need to be a ton going on. I mean, the song is very 1950s, very punk rock, and like its delivery was what makes it fun. Like it shouldn't have a ton going on. But like too much on that track would ruin the track. I think in a certain degree, there's going to be similar decisions made with Jurassic Park. That song I think also lends to a less is more kind of place. Now, go to like a track like Brown Coat Man. No, that there's a lot going on in that song because there has to be a lot going on in that song to make it what it needs to be necessarily. It's a fairly long track.
To keep the sense of momentum and rise. Yeah. That's an interesting point. Yeah. I mean, I think of some of that stuff obviously from a songwriter perspective already. You know what I mean? It taps in. I'm obviously not thinking about duration at all, really, during the composition phase. Occasionally there's a little bit of an intention behind something that kind of happens almost as a response to just trying to balance the scales, meaning that like if there have been a few songs developed in a row that maybe had more length, complexity, beauty to it, then then there maybe is an impulse if I'm going to create something new. And even there, it's like it's pretty rare that I intentionally sit down and go like, I'm going to write a song today. But there will be a sense of like, I haven't written something mean and punchy in a while, or alternatively, I haven't gone pretty in a while, and I should,
In general, like I mean, as the vocalist, what I usually get from Brian when he brings a song to the table, often feels like, hey, here's my collection of riffs, and I'm just gonna cycle through them and hope something cool happens.
There's structure. How dare you?
To which at some point I have to go in and go, okay, now what's our chorus and verse, and how do we really want to make these kind of flow to a certain extent? And you don't always do this. Like, you sometimes like you do have like a more structured idea, but there have definitely been songs where it's like, all right, we're just gonna play the A B C D A B C D A B C D, and that's gonna be the song. That's what it is. And I'm okay. Can we maybe like take out halftime the B part and then take it out and move A B, and then we'll come back to the C D later on. Just to give it more of like that traditional verse, chorus, bridge flow.
No, that's true. I mean, you did have us go back and edit that 12/12 song, right? Like the final version of that will be.
And I can't tell you how much different, like as far as like structurally, that song feels better now to me. Like just being that little bit different.
What's wild is how again like instinct is instinct, and like in rehearsal I will often find myself still going, oh yeah, that's right, I'm supposed to be practicing this other way. Like things just come out the way that they come out in terms of making sense. It was Speed Song, as I recall, that was a really funny example to me of at some point, you had articulated this notion that was hitting my ears as like, you are somehow following your own internal logic and structure to this song that is different than mine. That like your beat one somehow was different than mine. It was like, what? Like that you were listening to in your head a different song than I was. Like, is that still true of Speed Song?
Oh, 100%. So for anyone who is not a drummer out there, Brian counts it as what I would count the beat it's the pickup beat from the previous measure. And so when I think of the rhythm and the pulse, I start on a 1 that's like essentially a beat later than you do. Like I would start there with the you kind of count the into the riff, as the beginning of the riff, but to me, it's like the thing that leads us into the riff. Like there'd be a partial measure in the beginning of the music if I were looking at the sheet of music, and for you, there's not. That's the first note of the song. But it's just the way that the song feels in my head. That's not my beat one. That's like a pickup beat to the actual track. And so for God, we butted heads for months on this thing, and then it got even more ridiculous because at a certain point, like I start fucking with the structure.
Was conflict. It's just like it's a fascinating thing, you know, to me, because like there's the notion of the rhythmic count that's taking place of it's in a 4/4 time signature, but even there's always been some gray area that exists. Like I think of a band like Tool, and I mean that's a lot of what the prog rock and math rock stuff obviously is playing around with those varied concepts of going, ooh, it's about the math, right? Of going 4/4 means that every 3 measures is 12 beats, and 12 beats could also be 2 measures of 6 or 4 measures of 3 in addition to 3 measures of 4.
Or take it even further to like the Grateful Dead level, where they've got 2 separate drummers that are playing in 2 completely different time signatures that only lock up like every 24 measures. Like it's to them, there's an internal logic of how those songs work.
Well, and I don't listen to the Dead, but that is in a way where I was going with something like Tool. I think about there's a section in Lateralis from Tool, a breakdown, where it's bass and a hi-hat, and it's this like it's a pattern that hits the ears in an odd way, and then yeah, I don't know, the way the guitar comes in on top of it, the vocals come in on top of that, and then when the bass drum and snare come in to like hold the beat. Who's the dude? Stewart Copeland from The Police is another one that as a drummer, I'm constantly going, you slippery fuck. Like, what was that? You know what I mean? Like, as far as what the count is, and then he starts playing a groove and you're going, what? How did you?
Well, and I don't want to be the guy to point it out. Yet another guy who's been tangentially involved in the jam band community, obviously as a member of Oysterhead, with what's his name from Fish, Trey Anastasio.
Didn't he do some film score stuff too? I'm trying to remember what.
Oh, Copeland does a ton of stuff these days. Like he's doing orchestral music and stuff places. He's doing film score. He kind of went on and became like the consummate artist, we'll just say, later in life. And what's funny is that, like, have you ever listened to him talk about the Police and like his involvement in the Police? Is that like he was the punk rock guy? Like he was the guy who's playing like shitty 2-minute whatever songs, and like the world kind of moves into a place where he becomes the artist out of all that and goes his own way, playing complicated stuff. And you know, you've got Sting going and becoming like the pop guy. It's very interesting to listen to how that band was made up. And what's even funnier is because for both of those guys, it was when they brought in the guitar player, he was the guy that actually taught them how to write songs that weren't like just simple punk songs.
Yeah, you know, I haven't watched a lot of necessarily like solo interviews or a deep dive, but what comes to mind as you asked that question was I do remember buying and watching a Blu-ray when, you know, concert DVDs, you know what I mean? Like releases like was still kind of a thing. There was a Blu-ray release of a Police reunion. They did link up briefly, and they headlined Bonnaroo one year and did a handful of shows. I think my sister Haley saw them at Bonnaroo. I didn't get to see them on that run, but I did buy the Blu-ray, and the Blu-ray, above and beyond being a concert film, I should say, like a lot of concert documentaries, it wasn't only the stage performance, right? And even though it's been years since I watched it, I remember that it was like not in an overly dramatic way, and I'm struggling to remember even again a specific moment, but that the tension between those two was obvious, right? In the way that you go, whatever existed that ultimately drove these people apart, they've set aside enough to show up here today, but all that baggage still exists, you know. And whether it's Pink Floyd or, like, you know what I mean, any of those bands, I think that, so, you know, some of that stuff happens and it's a bummer. And because there's a world in which it doesn't make me feel like I'm talking behind my friend's back to say that, like, Levante and I had, he was the friction in my world in terms of challenging and pushing and just coming at the material from a different place forever and ever and ever, right? Where he'd sit there when I'd come to the table with some new song and be like, dude, do you write in anything other than, like, drop D every time? Like, try another key, will you? You know what I mean? Where I'd come back and just be like, I have the songs that I wrote just as a fuck you to Levante. You know what I mean? Like, in a loving way, right? Like there's something really amazing in any number of creative realms. There's something to be said for friction, that it is in fact the rubbing of shit together, you know what I mean, that makes fucking heat. That is why where that term even means, right? And so the absence of friction, accordingly, it's like, well, who wants that? You know, I think a lot of it gets muddied. I assume, because I've never been there, I assume a lot of it gets muddied at that point that it is a career, and that whatever it has meant to people, to then take that dynamic as it must have existed at the garage band level, you know what I mean? Those personalities, let's assume, were fully formed already, and that whatever things had the potential to bubble up, you know, certainly were bound to sooner or later. And I imagine that, again, I assume that maybe there's less of a focus on maintaining the interpersonal relationships inside the unit at the point that it gets propelled. You hear about bands that it's like they don't live in the same fucking town, half-hour radius of each other, like, and haven't for decades, you know, that there isn't as much of that sense of really being involved in each other's lives, where the moments of conflict, I disagreed with something Connor wanted just the other night, but it was his song, and I thought about all the times that I've asked him and others to, like, follow my vision and trust my vision or whatever, where again, what was important for me to articulate to him in that moment was just going, dude, all I want you to know is that I want to give you what you want. So let's keep figuring it out until you're getting what you want. I do want to give you what you want, right? Like, and anyway, I'm just saying that, like, yeah, I imagine that, like, when you're not living near each other, hanging out like that in a moment where you're feeling, maybe it's easier to dig in, right? And be stubborn and be like, no, fuck you. You know what I mean? Like, and the ego and all that shit, you know?
I mean, there's also other dynamics, like, you know, me and, you know, my buddy Willie, we played music together for a long time. We've had our ups and downs in there. The big thing that I've come to personally believe is that the personal relationship always comes first. I will break up a band in a second. Like, if I feel like I don't like the people, if I'm starting to not like my friends in the band anymore. Like, if this is going to cause us to not be friends, I'd just as soon not do this. Because I'd rather keep the friendship than keep a band. There'll be other bands. There's always other bands. I've had over 30 some of them in my life. If I want another one, generally speaking, I can go and start another band. It's not a problem. But friendships are harder to maintain, and I'd rather put the effort into keeping that together than just this thing that we do sometimes. And especially as you get older and it becomes like less of an all the time thing, you know. If we're gigging out every weekend and, you know, constantly together and up each other's asses, I am sure I will get under people's skin in a very, very dealing with me constantly fashion, because I have an energy about me like that. Let's put it that way. But, you know, well, one of the other things is one of the other things with bands like that is that the minute something becomes a paycheck, it changes. the dynamic. And what are you willing to do for a paycheck versus somebody else? Where's the line of your artistry and what you think the better course of action is for a paycheck? Like, oh, I think this is going to be the best way to get the money out of what we're doing with our time versus, well, I think this is what's going to be the best thing we can do with this music to get the money out of it for our time. And those decisions, they start having financial consequences. Now, maybe they're not huge, but like, hey, we could have did this with our career. We did this with our career. And I don't feel like it's panned out in the ways that what my decision would have landed. So you're always going to kind of go into places like with in particular the Police. A lot of it is that Sting was ready, I think, to go and produce pop hits long before he did, and kind of held himself back for the sake of a band as opposed to just going and being Sting. And I think you develop some resentment of like holding yourself back for other people, and like, God, I could have had another 5 years as Sting eponymously, and I kind of gave that up for these guys and that kind of deal. So you're always gonna have that kind of, even if it was a decision that you made, like the resentment of, well, why did I let these guys fuck myself out of a career for 5 more years?
Career thing's interesting, even as far as like you definitely have seen bands lose members, I feel like, over touring agendas, right? That aspect of the work, that I think, whether it is money motivated or to whatever degree, hopefully there are people who are going, no, this is just all I want to do. Like, we have the chance to do it. That's all I want to do now. You know what I mean? Like, you get that energy sometimes from people and go, that's beautiful. The idea that one of the members at any given time, though, sits there and goes like, dude, like, can we take a couple months and like not do this? And the rest are going, no, like, this is what we do. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think you do get that kind of shit for sure too.
Brian is absolutely thinking of me right now and how I get pissed off anytime anybody says no to anything. God damn it, why are we not taking advantage of this opportunity, people? I don't care if you're on vacation, fucking move the vacation. Band always comes first.
No, our band's in an interesting spot. I mean, I to your point about taking relationships first, I've been playing with this same group of guys since I was 12, right? So while I've had to some degree other bands that I've started, it's not like what you've described. And part of that is because as a human being, I prioritize relationships that way. You know what I mean? Now, yeah. So there's an interesting example as I say that where I'm going, ooh, I do think of the time that we kicked out the bass player who was one of my and our best friends because there was a conflict clearly brewing, right? Where to your point, it was like, I'm starting to resent the fact that like, you're causing problems for things musically for me, and I don't want to, and so it's better to have you out of this space of my world completely so that I can try to salvage that relationship such as it is. Much like, in some of the many ways that romantic relationships and musical relationships have in common, though, is that staying friends after a breakup is something that, some people can navigate better than others too.
Well, and to me, it brings to mind we played with a different guitar player when I first joined the band, and and I love Jim, but and I don't think even it has most of the issues that we had. I don't think were issues of him as a player. He was just at a point in his life, I think, in which he couldn't dedicate the necessary time or emotional state to what we were doing. But like at the same time, like we're not putting out the best product we can, and I'm resenting this person because the music is suffering because of quote unquote their emotional state and where they're at. And it's like I think there was definitely some more resentment from how that whole thing ended. but I'm glad to see he's coming around to shows again and stuff like that. Because as a person, I always thought he was a great dude, and I hate to not have a great dude in my life. But sometimes those relationships, fucking, it's tough, man. Like, that's the hard part.
Yeah, no doubt, and it's like you're right. I've absolutely treated it seriously enough that it's like I am willing to take those kind of steps. And I suppose even now, we've been broaching that topic in a way that, to me, what's in my mind has nothing to do with getting rid of anybody. But I have become increasingly aware of and intrigued by this idea of the performing act is a thing unto itself, right? Both in the bands that I watch and in my own life, right? So the idea that the guitar player from the Deftones doesn't fly to, I don't think he flies at all. I know he doesn't go to Europe and like do any of their international travel anymore. And so Chino takes this other guy that's in his band crosses out. When they do international dates, there's a different guitar player. Last couple times I've seen him, there's some other guitar player on stage with them. I'm going, I don't know who the fuck that guy is. You know what I mean? He's just like filling out some, some space, some of the space that's on the record. Mastodon, even, before some of their recent challenges and Brett's death and stuff, they started adding a fifth player who was a touring member of the band. I don't think he was on the records. I think they were playing the synthesizer parts and things on the records themselves, one or more of the band members, right? But they added a player on stage to do that. I've over the years seen people play with backing tracks. Joe, who's going out on the road with us, I think their bass player is not. That they're a 3-piece and they're going out as a 2-piece, playing along with backing tracks every night for their bass parts, right? So the idea of sitting there and going, got it. Is there a world in which at a moment that somebody doesn't want to hit the road, can it be navigated without discomfort? I'd like to fucking hope so. You know what I mean?
Well, and to that end, like, even I just discussed with you this past weekend at the movies, that like I've started working on learning, like, or creating more learning rhythm tracks where I can sing and play guitar, and you can play guitar with me, and it could be just you and me, which will allow us to perform more and get out there and kind of start building the foot swell that I think we really need in a lot of ways, without having to rely on a bunch of other people.
No, because to your point, I'll say that in terms of just my belief and love of you as a vocalist is going, yeah. People hearing those choruses, you singing those choruses with just that minimum viable product of the two, acoustic guitars and those choruses, I think is enough for people to fall in love and go, I want more of that. Yes.
Well, and the thing is as you said, it's like, what does it mean? Like, it's the thing I've in a lot of ways struggled with from a marketing perspective of the band, is it's like, what is the band? And the thing that we both kind of come down is as long as you and me are there, it can be Puma Thurman is like the baseline. Like, we can have the vocals and like the songwriter there. That's at least a place to start. Beyond that, it's kind of whoever shows up.
Brian and Connor are absolute songwriters and contributors. Connor's fingerprints are going to be on some of this new material in a way that I'm really excited about, even though, to your point, Puma Thurman started and played and recorded an album without him. He is serious enough about guitar as his chosen instrument that he's been having fun with those effects pedals and those dives. And there are things to me, like I had that thought, right, of going, am I capable, I know all the riffs that Connor plays, including ones that he wrote, which is the case, right? So can I go out and be a surrogate for him? Yeah, we can represent the act, right? But I'm also acknowledging in my own heart it's not going to be as good, but that's also okay. It's not a reason not to pursue furthering what our broader objectives. I say in business, I have a business phrase that I use all the time, which is don't let perfect be the enemy of progress, right? That's sitting there and going, well, unless it's perfect, it's not ready. It's like, no, that's going to have you dribbling the fucking ball forever and ever. And the clock's going to run out and you're going to go, I didn't even make a single shot. I didn't score a single point, but I'm an incredible player. You know what I mean? It's like I knew how to win the game, but I never did anything. Like that to me was always the thing that struck me as deeply stupid.
It's the Wayne Gretzky. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah. So I don't want to stare at the scoreboard, right? I definitely don't want to stare at the scoreboard.
Right on. Well, I was here. I thought we were going to talk about movies, but sometimes you talk music.
No, it's that peek behind the curtain sort of thing. Some of that stuff is going on, and I was thinking, like, is this too inside baseball? But I think that stuff's fun, and if that gives any value to anybody, I've certainly addressed that notion before of that songwriting 101 concept and ways that you just sort of show all aspects of the process. So if that is a part of what this show does, is that sort of diary of a working band, peek behind the curtain on occasion, that's awesome, because that was always a topic that interested me and that I felt like there was an unscratched itch out in the world as far as going, I don't know if somebody's doing that already. I'm not aware of it. So
we're gonna be the how did this get made of Puma Thurman. That's all I'm saying.
There you go.
All right, folks. Well, thank you for hanging out with us today. We shall return.
We
Hope
came
you're
from
ready.
celluloid, and we're turning it into music and podcast for you.